Hi there and welcome. My name is Selena and this sequence is going to be sort of your introduction to yoga or Yoga 101. And I think it's important to start by talking about this, especially if you're brand new to yoga, because you likely have these visions of these like crazy big poses and you might be thinking, I'm not flexible or I can't do that. And I just want to preface by saying yoga is really not about the poses at all. Instead, we use the poses in order to explore kind of our mind and our body and our breath, and all of that is just about starting to take on a practice of being present and exploration and curiosity as to how we're feeling and what's going on in this moment. So a yoga practice, however small, a daily practice, is almost like journaling. It's just checking in. And when you start to do it every day, you start to notice changes in your mood or how you're feeling or how your body feels. So that's really the intention of why we take up a yoga practice. This sequence, we're just going to go over the sort of top 3 yoga poses. So I'm going to walk you through downward facing dog, through mountain pose, and through child's pose, just so that you can feel really confident that you know how to do them correctly and you understand why we're doing them. So all you really need today is a place to practice. You don't even need a yoga mat necessarily. And let's get started. So one of the main poses in yoga, and I'm sure you've heard of it, is downward facing dog. So to come to downward facing dog, you start by planting the palms firmly on the mat, and you want them to be about shoulder distance apart and really spread the palms so that you can use kind of the full circumference of your hand. And then you'll extend your legs back behind you and lift the hips high to come to our downward facing dog. So when you look back at your feet, you want them to be about inner hips distance apart, and then you can gaze forward at the palms once again and make sure that they're still shoulder distance apart. And then we're really trying to get our butt super, super high. Come forward towards a plank pose or a top of a push-up, and we use this posture to measure out the length of our dog. So between our hands and our feet, this is how long we want to be. And then from here, you can crease at the hips and take it high once again. You'll notice that I'm up on the balls of my feet. I've got a deep bend in the knees, and I'm really trying to scooch my butt high so that I have a beautiful long line through the spine. And then when you're up here, you just breathe and you focus on wrapping your armpits in towards heart center, and you keep the knees a little bit bent even more, and you keep reminding yourself to lift the seat super high. Drop the head a little bit so that the ears are actually in line with the upper arm bones, and don't forget to breathe. Let's take 2 more breaths. And then whenever you're ready to come down, you just tap the knees back down. So downward facing dog, if that's difficult for you at this moment, know that as you start to practice it over time, it will get easier. You're building strength in the arms, you're building strength in the legs. Additionally, a little bit more context as to why we practice downward facing dog. Not only are you strengthening and stretching pretty much the whole body, you are also doing an inversion, which means that our hips are higher than our heart, and we get a really nice kind of drain of blood flow back into the brain, which is very nice. And you might actually feel like your sinuses are opening up as well. So let's just try it one more time. You plant your palms down, remember to spread the palms, legs go back behind you, we crease at the hips, we take it up and back. Look at the feet, inner hips distance apart, look at the hands, shoulder distance apart, let the head fall, ears in line with the upper arm bones, and then think it's like you're pushing down into the hands, you're pushing down into the feet in order to get the butt a little bit higher. So it's almost as if the hands and the feet could be like launch pads that you can keep lifting up. So that's downward facing dog. Go ahead and come down. And let's move on to our second posture that we'll go over today, and that is mountain pose. Mountain pose is a standing posture. So you're going to come all the way to stand up. And when you look at the feet, because the feet are probably the most important part of this whole pose, because that's what's touching the ground. So when you look down at the feet, you want all 10 toes pointing in the same direction. We want our feet to be about hips distance apart. So notice I'm not standing super wide. I'm not standing too narrow. I've got maybe 6 inches in between my feet. And if you want to take a fun measure of inner hips distance, you can actually spin your foot and the toes tickle the inside of that foot. And you can try it on the other. And that's about your inner hips distance apart. So you've got your feet hips distance, and now all 10 toes point forward. And I'm going to be very particular about this, because if you start to open your toes wide, it's a different shape in the pelvis, and we actually really want this sort of wrapping in and grounding down. So all 10 toes are pointing forward. And then when you've got the feet, then we start to focus on the rest of the body. So can you find your hips sort of resting over the center of the foot, more of the arch of the foot? If you're rounding down, can we focus on standing up nice and tall? And as you stand up tall, notice if the shoulders are reaching up towards the ears, let's drop them down. Let's keep the chin parallel to the floor. And feel as though there's almost a string attached to the crown of the head, and that string is pulling you up a little bit taller towards the world up above. And then when you've got that, you can close your eyes. And as you close your eyes, all of a sudden your awareness becomes much more tuned in to the internal landscape of your body. And you might even notice a little bit of rocking forward and back. And that's a fun, kind of interesting observation because it means that your feet and your ankles and your legs are starting to really tune in to what it is to hold yourself consciously on your 2 feet. And can you bring all of your awareness down to the feet? And let's put a little more weight into your big toe ball mounds and put a little more weight into the outer edges of the heels. And then find the pinky toe ball mounds and find the inner heels. So you've just drawn an X marks the spot on the bottom of each foot. And then try and put equal weight between all 4 of those corners. Keep a tiny micro bend in the knees. And then once again, lift a little taller through the crown of the head. If it feels comfortable for you, allow the palms to gently start to face forward. And then just take a couple of breaths here. And you have this really beautiful dichotomy of what's below you and what's above you. And just like a mountain, we stay very grounded and sturdy in our base so that we can be lofty up above. And from that loftiness, you can see views that maybe you never thought were possible. But if we didn't have the grounding into the earth beneath us, we would float away. And if we didn't have the floating and the loftiness that the mountain pose gives us, we would stay too grounded in the feet. So we're just becoming this sort of center. So nice. Let's take 2 more breaths here. And then when you're ready, you can blink your eyes open. So whenever we say to come to mountain pose, that is what we are emulating when we arrive in mountain pose. One last posture that I want to walk through today with you, and that is child's pose. So where mountain pose we're standing, child's pose we come back down to the earth, back down to the ground. So you'll come down, and in child's pose we want our knees a little bit wide. If you're working with a yoga mat, I like to use the measure of the edges of the mat to be a good measure for how wide we go. But if you're on the carpet, just imagine you're kind of opening into a V shape. And then your toes are touching back behind you. So you've got this nice triangle. As you sit the seat back, you take your arms forward. And then if possible, you'll lower the crown of the head, or excuse me, the forehead down to the mat. Okay. And now I want to offer a couple of variations. If your knees are really tight or if this feels totally impossible to bend the knees so much, you can take a blanket or a towel or anything really to put behind the knees. So you kind of prop yourself up and then you're not being forced to take quite so deep of a bend in the knees. And you'll still take that forward, and you can see my butt's a little bit higher in the air. Another option, if it feels like the head isn't quite coming down to the ground, you can place a blanket or a pillow, a towel, a stack of books, whatever it is you need on the floor so that your forehead makes contact with something. And the reason why we want the forehead down is because we really want to be able to relax across the neck, and having the forehead rooting into something is very calming for the nervous system. And that's really what child's pose is all about. Is about really just like relaxing and letting go. So let's come down into it. And you might notice that you can start to breathe a little bit deeper into the low back. Can you consciously relax the shoulders? Relax the neck. Maybe even rock your head side to side. Just releasing any tension that you might be holding along the shoulders, the neck, the jaw. And as you settle into this, you might notice that you can actually sort of lengthen the torso a little bit. And it's these really beautiful layers of tension just starting to slip away from the body. And we'll stay here for 3 breaths. Wonderful. And then to come out of it, you lift up, you just walk your hands back, come up to a nice comfortable seat. So we went over downward facing dog, mountain pose, and child's pose. Those are three of probably the most common postures that you'll come across in yoga. And I just wanted to let you feel really confident and empowered that you're doing them right, you know why you're doing them, and you're getting your body in alignment. So wonderful job today, and I'll see you soon.